Welcome to the Spawn Chunks, episode number 389 for Monday, February 16th, 2026. This is a podcast all about Minecraft, available across all major podcast platforms, including a video version on YouTube and Spotify. If you're enjoying the show, consider subscribing wherever you're listening to this. My name is Johnny, but the internet knows me as Pixelriffs, and joining me, as always, is a marvelous Joel Duggan. Hi, Joel.
Hello, and if shows are something you're into, movies specifically, then you should listen to The Render Distance. That is the extended version of the podcast, and Johnny and I just spent a few minutes talking about Predator Badlands, which I watched over the weekend, as well as Buster Keaton's Sherlock Jr. set to REM, which is an interesting cinematic experience that Johnny took in over the weekend. So that kind of stuff is what you get in The Render Distance. It varies from movies to more Minecraft to just stuff that we're interested in. You can go to patreon.com/thespawnchunks to support the show, and then you get access to the extended version of the podcast. You get access to the monthly hangouts and the quarterly hangouts. The monthlies are usually at the end of the month on the last Saturday of the month. So that should be the 28th. This month in February, if you want to partake in that. Once again, it's patreon.com/thespawnchunks.
And this week, after another snapshot turning baby zombies into bobbleheads, we're going to open up the Chunk Mail inbox. And a Chunk Mail dispenser episode is what we call it. It's something that our patrons unlocked a while ago by having some extra support for the show. We like to give a bit of a community focus every month. So we're going to be chatting on what's on the mind of our community of listeners after we do our quick login.
What have you been doing in Minecraft this week, my friend?
This week, I have been continuing to work on the beacon mine. The beacon mine is continuing apace, and I'm now using the drowned farm to repair my tools. So I am gathering copper in the background as I dig out the area for this copper aging machine. And so far, I haven't been AFK at this farm, mostly because I'm concerned about Thorn's damage, even though I'm hitting an armor stand over and over again to affect the drowned inside the farm with that sweep attack that swords have. Not even using sweeping edge, because you're trying to hit the drowned as many times as possible to give them as much chance as possible to generate reinforcements. I'm mostly concerned about Thorn's damage from any mobs that spawn with armor, which they do more frequently in hard mode, and then starvation, because swinging the sword is still going to take some hunger points. Healing up from Thorn's damage also takes some hunger as well. And after a certain point, either starvation or Thorn's damage is going to kill me if I stand still at this farm, and I don't have some means of recovering HP. So that's going to be something I look into with beacons, which can just about offset the damage you take from starvation, but I might need to look into other methods to speed up the regeneration effect you get from a beacon. And then in the meantime, I'm still just using it as and when to repair my pickaxe, because obviously that's taking a lot of durability damage from just removing this massive area of stone, which is going pretty well so far. I'm nearly 3/4 of the way through the area I need dug out, and the copper farm has generated about a stack of copper blocks at this point. It's generated like a full row of stacks of ingots. And also a lot of tridents, because the naturally spawned reinforcements will spawn with natural drowned equipment, which means Nautilus shells, which also means tridents and like fishing rods and stuff like that. So now that that's all sorted out, I'm pretty comfortable using that farm. And outside of that, now that I'm on hard difficulty, I'm also looking at gearing up for some stuff that can only be done on hard, like zombifying and curing my entire villager trading hall is not something I've done before. I have 2 villagers in there who were originally zombies that I've cured, and everyone else is just completely fresh villagers bred up and moved in with their different professions. And now they're all basically fully mastered in terms of the professions. I have all of the trades that I would want. I wasn't keen on trying to zombify them on normal and having a 50-50 chance of them dying. So at this stage, yeah, I'm going to probably end up converting a bunch of them to zombies and back. It means I get better trading rates on iron, which is one of the things I've been trading to get stock of emeralds built up, and then buying redstone from clerics isn't going to be affected by that, but at least I'll have a better stock of emeralds in the process. And there's a couple of other things that I might want to trade for in terms of better rates. Like now I have all of the rotten flesh from the drowned farm. I might want to trade a bit of that to the clerics so that I can get emeralds from that, and that might be better off with slightly lower trading rates as well. But yeah, aside from that, I'm not feeling too much of the effects of hard, except when an Enderman generates inside of the area that I'm digging, and it's usually like holding a block, and I go, well, that's a block that I want. It's still on some gravel or some, dirt that was underground or something like that. And so I normally just fling myself at those Endermen without a second thought. And oh boy, they hit hard when you've gone
Yeah.
from normal to hard difficulty. And I'm like, I need to start hiding in walls again to make sure I deal with these guys, because a couple of them got me down to like 2.5 hearts of health, and I went, oh, okay, I need to be treating these encounters a lot more cautiously than I did before.
It's always different when you go from level like normal to hard, or we've been on hard for so long on the Citadel that I don't think about it much. But if I go to a different server, I think Realm of Vastin wasn't on hard. I think it was on normal, or at least at first. And just like drops are different for farms, and like adjusting your brain to like the different difficulty. I also find that if I go and do like a snapshot world where I'm not wearing netherite armor, I don't have elytra, like training your brain to like, oh, I'm not end game indestructible here. Like I'm wearing copper. Like this makes a difference when you're dealing with skeletons that don't miss, or stuff like that. So that's always a tricky situation with the blocks and the drops from Enderman. Like I would be inclined just to leave them. Like if it's got a block that I want, I would just leave it alone. I tend to not mess with Enderman very much. I've always found them difficult. Enderman and baby zombies, where has always been like the timing of hitting them has always been a little bit odd to me. And I don't find that the blocking mechanic tends to work as well with Enderman. And I'm not sure what it is, whether they can hit the top of your head or what. But yeah, I've never found it very, very easy.
Yeah, they tend to move around kind of to the side of you a little bit, because I think the momentum they have running at you often means that they collide with the player and then they kind of pivot to the left or to the right. And so they're sort of like creepers where they'll come at you sideways sometimes. And so yeah, like it's tricky dealing with them, but most of the time I just do it because I'm feeling stubborn, and half the time I'm streaming. And so it's like when pillager patrols show up, I could fly up into the air and despawn them or just ignore them until they wander off, but instead I go to my ender chest, I get the mace out, and I try and like drop on the pillager captain. And that's how I've been farming ominous bottles very, very slowly since they were added. But yeah, that's been my week really. I've not really done a whole lot of entertaining stuff outside of just making sure that the Drowned Farm video got published. And so I was surprised actually by the reception of that, because a lot of people, I think, now look at the reinforcement farms as something that's kind of been nerfed and is no longer worth consideration. But it was nice to see people were actually pretty open and receptive to the idea of this farm using zombie spawners, converting them to drowned, but still having means to generate more drowned to build up the numbers, basically. And I think it's been working fine for my needs. It's not going to be like game breaking in terms of the way it uses reinforcements, but I think I'm at least getting double the amount of copper that I would otherwise, and the community seems to have been pretty happy with that.
Well, I think that's the thing to always remember with these things is your needs, right? Like, I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times I've found a really good farm that I've had to cut into like half or a quarter of the production rates because I just don't need that much. Like I just have to store it or burn it or do something with it. It's just me, even though it's a multiplayer server, it's usually just me playing and using these resources at the scale that I want to use them at. So things like an iron farm or a moss farm, like I just don't need that much. Like the shulker box farm is a really good example. Like there really wasn't a smaller way to do it. And I ran it for like 90 minutes and I've got more shulker boxes than I know what to do with. It's like 2.5 shulker boxes full of shells. I've not even cracked the 2 shulker boxes. Like I'm still using the overflow as I'm slowly making shulker boxes to be using around the facility. And I haven't run out yet. So like that kind of stuff, I always wonder if it would be better if some of these farms were not as crazy. Like if there was a way to do things a little bit slower to, I don't know, increase the interaction. Like it would be kind of cool if I was only getting like a dozen shulker shells an hour or less. Whereas like, I've gone through my 24 shulker boxes. I have to go wander over to the shulker build that I made and get more. Like that could be more fun than just like going to the chest of reams of shulkers. And it almost calls into question, like, I mean, some people that watch me would know that I obviously built it, but like when you're coming in late to my streams, or you didn't know that I built and tore down a shulker farm in the fall, you were just like, what did you do? Spawn in like 2 chests worth of shulkers just to like have? It feels really OP. And so it would be cool if, the trend caught on of like making farms that are just like for whatever you need. You're a single player world, and a tutorial server, or a tutorial world prominently. So you don't need it to do 100,000 drops an hour or whatever the heck it would be if it was the old mechanics. But because I know that it was a lot, it was hard to, when you have a farm that creates the amount of drops that then create a problem. Like you actually have to find a sorting system that's robust enough to maintain the output of the farm. That to me is really overkill.
Yeah, no, this is definitely one of those things that is manageable enough. Like I can have a copper golem sorting through all of the armor and things in the background, and it's not overwhelmed with just a single copper golem helping out with the proceeds. So yeah, I think it's satisfying me for now. And I think if I want to look into river-based drowned farms or Dripstone Cave where I dig out an entire area like a perimeter or something, then that's something that's on the cards for the future, but I'm not rushing to it. And the fact that this is just conveniently next to where I process all of the copper and age it is just the icing on the cake, really, for me. So that's been my week anyway. You were talking about a bit about the stuff on the Mushroom Island, so what's new on the Citadel?
So I've been working on level 3. I think I started that just before the show last weweek, and now I've got into it deeply, and I finished the Command Center level 3 observation deck, for the lack of a better word. Like it's there. There's going to be several of them. They're going to be around on the different wings, like museum wings or whatever you want to call them of the Command Center, and I've raised the floor so you can see out better. I've added those kind of floating glass console hologram looking things with end rods, and added in things like bulkheads and level design for the ceiling and texture for the floor. I tried to echo the things that I was doing in the storage room because I really liked the way that looked, but I didn't want to copy it exactly. So I was trying to have like power conduits in the floor, thinking that most of these rooms would need that kind of power. I was trying to keep lights in the ceiling to make sure that it's not too dark at night. While I was working up there, there's no roof on the wings yet. I haven't really figured that out yet. I don't know what details I was going to be putting up there. I didn't know how much room I needed for the ceiling because I tend to do recessed lighting. And so depending on what the ceiling has, I have to adjust the roof to maybe hide the back of the frog lights that I use in the ceiling. And the roof has a level 4 sort of. There's like a center area that I need to build up, and I don't have an idea how that's going to work yet. So I've been sort of bopping back and forth between tweaking the outside and tweaking the inside, but it's come together pretty well. It's got a dark floor and a quartz ceiling, so it's a lot lighter in the ceiling. I've also decided to add some skylights near the observation deck, so again, keeps it lighter without the need to put frog lights just absolutely everywhere. And it's nice to kind of have that airy feeling in some of the larger spaces. I don't know what I'm going to do decoratively with the outer room. So once I finish the observation area, I'm then into the outer chamber, which is just a big chunk of space. Like it's above where the storage room is, but it's really only existing because it makes the outside of the command center look bulky. But inside, it's a set of stairs that go up to the observation deck, and I decided to raise the platforms on either side of it just to kind of give it a frame. I don't know what's going to go up there. More consoles, I guess. I don't want to just repeat these things everywhere because it does start to feel a little bit samey. And I've got 4 of these wings total, so there's 3 more to do. The good news is that those will be a lot faster because from a geometry standpoint, from an architecture standpoint, they're going to be the same. Inside, they might be different in terms of how they're laid out. I don't think the consoles are going to be the same in each one. I don't know if the function is going to be the same in each one. I might try to come up with something else. The good news is I'm not in any rush because if Minecraft comes out, in the next 6 months with new blocks or something like that, maybe I'll hit on a function or hit on a block that I want to use in it. But for now, I'm just kind of dealing with these large open spaces because at first, this is where I was going to put my storage, but I don't need that anymore. So it's good that I have the depth because it does give me some room where like the inside walls are different than the outside walls and all that stuff, but it is still a lot of space to kind of deal with. The hard part is really lighting it. If you get up to a ceiling that's 9 blocks above you, give or take, with a flat roof on it, it looks really dark. It looks like a cave instead of a room. And so then you have to figure out, well, how many frog lights am I going to put up there? How can I get some sort of light in the corner? So I decided to try some experiments with like vertical arrangements with end rods, and I've also got like multiple little lights, like single frog lights as opposed to big panels. So I'm just kind of messing around with that kind of stuff, and it's fun. Like it's cool to play around with, and you really do find the limit to the sci-fi palette in Minecraft when you're working with these spaces, especially this large. I think the thing that's missing for me, I tried some details with buttons and pressure plates, and they're okay. I'm going to have to eventually go do some custom map art, maybe in the end or over an ocean somewhere, and come up with several panels, which thankfully, once I do it once, I can copy the map and put them everywhere. But thinking about those white glowy panels from the backgrounds of Imperial designs in Star Wars, or anything that just has like buttons and switches and things that make it look more like a console. Like think about whatever you would see in the background in like the bridge of the Enterprise in the Next Generation. Like there was just a bunch of yellow and purple and orange buttons. No real need to know what they do. It was just kind of like decor. And I need some of that. The challenge there is going to be the fact that I really don't like that on the edge of the map you can see like a wood panel. So I may have to go into my texture pack and like change that texture to be something else. I might not have to retexture it. I don't know what Minecraft is using. Minecraft might be using the planks texture there. I might just be able to tell the model to just like, well, just use like deep slate instead of that, or quartz, or something that's not brown and wood looking. So we'll have to see what I can come up with. But they definitely need something. It's finished to a point where I feel like, okay, I've put enough work in it that it doesn't look forgotten, but it doesn't feel like it has the level of detail that I would want from a sci-fi build.
Have you considered the data pack that lets you make item frames invisible? Because I think that's a vanilla like command you can kind of toggle.
I have that.
Is that something that's right? Yeah, because that's one option, but it also like sometimes it can leave stuff kind of floating or like offset from the depth that you want in a different way. So I suppose it's really like a matter of taste at that point, right?
It depends on what's in it, right? Like I think if I remember, blocks tend to stick out, whereas items like say an end rod would lay flat. But I remember when I was using it in West Hill, it would be too flat. So like if you had a fish in your hand, you want to put it on the table, the fish would look like a piece of paper as opposed to a fish, because there wouldn't be enough depth. So the result, or the solution for me, was to put the fish in the hand of an armor stand and then lower that to the point where it was just touching the surface. And then it looked a lot more like the item that you had in your hand had been laid down on the table. And so those are options, and those are great options, but I also have to remember how many consoles and how big this place is, and like, do I want 1,000 item frames everywhere? Which I'm going to run into with maps if I do that too. So like I have to consider what that's going to look like and feel like. But yeah, I don't know what else I would put in an item frame. Like there's really only like end rods, maybe blaze rods, I guess buttons and pressure plates, but like it depends on how they are arranged in an item frame, because something like a slab in an item frame doesn't go flat, it sticks out. So like depending on how you want to do it, it could be cool, but I don't know. Redstone block maybe could be interesting. For like a big red button, like do not push, like that kind of stuff. But we'll have to see. I need to mess around with it. Yeah.
I was thinking about it from the map art perspective, because if you make a floor of glass in the end, you can effectively create transparency on maps. And with the item frame missing from the background of that, you could then make your own effectively like custom sprites. But again, it's about whether or not they look like 3D or not, and how much of that effect you really want from them. But the other thing I was thinking about asking, based on these screenshots, like do you have anything that's activating the observers from below? Like, are the lights blinking as you walk across the floor, or is that something that you don't have like the headroom for in the room below?
I have the headroom for, and it was an idea that I talked about on stream. I just didn't go back and do it yet, because it was like, am I keeping the observers? If I am, I'll go back and make them blink. But right now they're just kind of static. But I've done that elsewhere. The observers under the main bay doors on the ground floor, they blink, and they blink underneath either another observer or the underside of a dispenser. I can't remember, but it looks like a magnetic like bottom to a thing, right? And so that is blinking, and it was not the nicest redstone. I'm sure there's probably better ways to do it, but it works. And so that's one of the doors has that proof of concept on it. And I do like it because it's really subtle. You don't really notice it unless you're walking over it. And so I think it would be cool to do that. I also want to do some animated lights on the main power core in the middle, and that's going to be more dramatic. But having observers on the outside of that core also blinking could be cool, because I like the idea But yeah, I haven't done it. I do have a lot of room. The nice thing about this is that there's probably a good 5 or 6 blocks between the back of the ceiling of the floor below and the floor above, even with the floor depth. So like there's more than standing room. Like I can definitely stand and or jump in some places. So there's enough room to run a strip of redstone and put a timer in there and kind of see what happens.
Yeah, you've left yourself with enough like filler sort of space that you can create depth in the floor below or the ceiling above, and like that's ideal, I think. Yeah, for the design process of this, if you're working with like little build stone details like that. So yeah, worth a look for the future for sure. We're going to move into the news this week because we have a snapshot for Java Edition. That's Java Edition 26.1 Snapshot 7. This was released a day later than usual on Wednesday, February 10th. The new features in 26.1 Snapshot 7 include added adult sound variants for the following animals. Cats, which have a new variant called Royal. Pigs have new variants, which are Mini and Big. Cows have a new variant called Moody. And chickens have a new variant called Picky. The original sounds for each animal are now bundled into a variant called Classic, and every one of these animals has a random sound variant assigned to it from the new variant and the original one. So it's like dogs now, or tamed wolves, rather, where each of them has a unique personality. They've also added a trumpet instrument when a note block is placed on a copper block, and of course, since copper blocks have different ages, the sound of the trumpet differs based on the oxidation level of the copper block. The golden dandelion can now also be used on hoglin babies, where it did not work that way before. Other changes in 26.1 Snapshot 7, they've revamped the visuals of more baby mobs. They've fixed an issue where baby axolotl animations were being disrupted by their walking animation. The bounding boxes of baby zombies, husks, drowned piglins, zombified piglins, villagers, and zombie villagers have been increased to better fit the new models they got this week. There are also some UI changes to how the chat screen is handled when it's restricted by settings. The chat screen can now always be opened even when chatting is restricted by settings. When the chat screen is open, specific actions and message types may still be restricted, but information about the restrictions, if there are any, is displayed on top of the chat box and above the chat input when the chat screen is open. The same information can also be found in the world settings screen that was implemented recently. Chat entries from client actions like taking screenshots will now be displayed even when messages from players and servers are restricted. Changing chat settings will now hide all messages of restricted types and discard any new ones. And the handling of chat messages on a published local server is now more consistent with dedicated servers in regards to chat settings. Some technical changes in 26.1 Snapshot 7. The data pack version is now 99.1. The resource pack version is now 81. The internals of how chunk geometry data is stored in GPU memory and how they are rendered has been changed. There's a developer's note that says if you experience any visual bugs, performance degradation, or crashes, please report them on the bug tracker. This is an issue they're going to be monitoring pretty closely. In data pack changes, they've added a data-driven registry for the sound variants for pigs, cats, cows, and chickens that were added in this snapshot. The resource pack changes include updates to the block model format. Any block model can now support cutout or translucent, which are partly transparent pixels, in their textures. New entities have been added for both the redesigned baby mobs and for armor when worn by baby mobs. They've added support for the new sound variants for the aforementioned adult mobs as well. Fixed bugs of note in 26.1 Snapshot 7. A very old bug in which water in water cauldrons was not transparent has been fixed, alongside some newer issues like baby wolves having visible Z fighting, rabbits floating when they panic, piglet heads being off-center, golden dandelions not making certain types of mobs persistent, and players being able to feed baby pandas after feeding them golden dandelions. To read the full list of bug fixes and other technical changes, check out the Minecraft.net changelog that's linked in this week's show notes at thespawnchunks.com.
So obviously the big news this week is the new baby mobs for the hostile mobs. But before we get to that, I thought it was cool that they added the trumpet under the copper.
Yeah.
I think that's cool that that they made a new sound for people to play with that are into that, because we don't talk about it much on the show, but there's a whole slew of really creative people that do awesome music in Minecraft and or even use sounds in Minecraft for effects, or you enter in a room and something plays because of it's got skulk sensors or something like. And I think that the more options that players have in that realm, the better. And using copper with the several different oxidation stages, I think is great.
Yeah, I think the fact that we've basically got a whole brass section now, more or less, thanks to there being 4 different states of copper blocks, I think that's a really fun one. I didn't check whether they were the same based on like waxed copper, but I presume they still make the same trumpet
I
sounds, and
think
it's
so, yeah.
not just one type. But yeah, I think really fun that they're still thinking about ways to add to old features like that, because note blocks have been in the game for ages, but it was only starting in I think 1.15 that they really added a bunch more new instruments to it. So neat that the sound design team also has a chance to pitch in on some of these, and that brings us to stuff like the new mob sounds as well. I think it's interesting that the drop itself, like as far as we can tell, as we creep further into February, it seems to be focused on entirely on reworking baby mobs and some of the sort of back end technical changes, of course. But the new sound design for the note block and then the new sound variants for adult mobs, I think, are a really nice addition. It's sort of similar, like I said, to how tamed wolves have different personalities. You've now got a few different like meows that the cats can do, and the pigs have 2 different types as well. So you can imagine, even if it's not reflected this way in game, that there are like different varieties of pigs, a lot of which would make very different sounds.
Yeah, I haven't noticed anything in the game with the wolves, but I'm not spending much time with wolves in Minecraft these days. And I have to say, even when there's a video showcasing the sounds of cows, for example, I'm not really noticing a difference. I guess, like, for me, it's like, well, they've made a moody cow. It's like the cow wasn't moody already. Because whenever I hear a cow, it's not like it's a soft, gentle moo. It's usually pretty poignant. So I don't know. I think there's lots of people that are spending time in farms with animals in early game that'll probably notice the difference when there's like several cows around and it's not the same moo over and over again. I think people will be appreciative of that. But I just haven't noticed the change. It seems to be pretty subtle, but I'd imagine it's one of those things that you notice en masse as opposed to like in an example video of playing one sound next to the other. I think it'll be more obvious when it's actually in an in-game situation when you're surrounded by a number of these animals and they sound a little bit different from one to the other.
Given that the average player is going to mass farm cows to get steak early game, then I imagine it's going to at least make farms like that, if not more bearable to be around, because there's still going to be a cacophony of noise. At least the noises aren't going to be so repetitive that it starts to drive you mad. So I think it's a good change. I think it's nice to have a bit more variety, and given that the art team has been so involved in making a lot of changes for this update so far, it's nice to see some of the other creative disciplines getting a hand on the ball, as it were, in this case. Speaking of which, we have new baby hostile mobs this time around, a bit of a change up to the block models of like the baby zombies, baby husks, obviously, like the variants of those, and baby villagers also got a look in this time as well. How do you feel about the shape of them now that they've had these changes made?
They really did lean into the cartoony. Like it's very, very different, and it's even more cartoony than some of the animals, and I find it very odd. They look fine in a still image, but the moment you see them moving around in the game, they feel very, very strange. I feel like the heads are too large. I think the idea of making them cute is good, and I certainly like the direction better than where they were previously, specifically the villagers. Like, I think the baby villagers were weird looking. They just were shrunk down adults. Like, it didn't feel right at all. And like the baby villagers felt like something you would fertilize, not actually something that would grow up, whereas they feel like kids, they feel like toddlers, but the heads are so big, especially when you see it from the side and you realize how far the chin and the back of this head stick out over the body of these characters. They all feel top heavy. They've also reduced the size of the body and the length of the limbs. And when you watch a baby piglin walk around, feels very strange because, again, there's no arms and knees in Minecraft, so it's just these little stubs as they walk around. I've not seen a baby zombie move. I'd imagine it's also pretty weird because they move pretty quick, so it means their legs have got to go like crazy underneath them. But the baby villagers, because they've got their arms folded in front of them, they remind me of Mo from Wall-E. I'm not sure if people are familiar with that character. He's the microbe obliterator. He's the little cleaner droid that has like a little like rotating brush in front of him, and he just dislikes grime intensely and just always scrubs it away. And it feels like that. But Mo he's got a little tiny wheel that he sits on, but his body is almost as wide as his head, so he feels a little bit more balanced as a character design. And I
Yeah.
think that's what's missing. I think like they've reduced the bodies and they've increased the head size or kept them similar, but the ratio feels really really odd. For example, like when these characters come up to hit you, they're gonna headbutt you because like they can't reach you. Their
Yeah.
heads are gonna hit you before their hands do. So it's a little bit strange. I think they could maybe reduce the head size a little bit and still be okay. Like you'd still have that Funko Pop like cute factor, but I think the heads need to be just a little bit smaller. I mean, specifically the piglins. Like my gosh, they have wide heads anyway. Like their heads are bigger than average mobs, and the kids just look like they're gonna tip over. Like
Yeah.
it's very odd.
I think honestly the piglins and zombie piglins are probably my favorite though, because they have more of like a uniform shape along the sides because their bodies are wider, and so it feels
Mm.
like it supports the rugby ball style head that they have on top of them. Whereas, yeah, the rest of them do look a bit like Funko Pops. And I think it's neat that they've now adjusted the armor to match the scale of the newer bodies that they have as well. Like they've got new armor models in the game specifically to support baby zombies wearing armor, so it doesn't look like they're just wearing this like enormous shirt
Mhm.
in the process of equipping them with armor. But I do think, yeah, there's something a little odd about them, and I think it's because when they have shrunk the models of some of the other baby mobs, or when they've updated the textures to match, they've shrunk the pixel density of whatever surface they're working on. So, like a baby turtle has like a 3 pixel wide body or like 3 pixel wide head, and so they can only get a certain amount of textural detail on there. And what they've done with the zombies, maybe just because it makes more sense for Minecraft's like branding, perhaps, to have a zombie head look like a zombie head at all stages, or maybe just because those zombies don't grow up into full adult zombies, so they don't have the opportunity to have their heads be more proportional, but they've kept the pixel density of the head the exact same size, which has meant keeping the head itself the exact same size to support the canvas. And what that means is you end up with a head that looks disproportionate to the body, because while the body is shrunk down, the head still has to maintain the pixel density just based on like the size of it to keep the same design in place. And it looks odd at first. I think initially they also had a version of the baby villagers that didn't have like the projected nose. They just had like a flat texture for the nose. I don't know if that's been resolved already or not, but that's another one of those things that people called out early and were like, this feels strange when you see it for the first time. Or maybe it was just that the nose didn't like stick out as much with the block model or something, but there was like a couple of things about them that I think felt very uncanny initially, and since then I think maybe people have got a bit more used to it. But I think honestly the piglins are my favorite. I'm still getting used to the way villagers look, but yeah, they do look like a little droid or something like that. I can imagine that actually helping if you wanted to do some reskinning of certain things for a sci-fi area, though, like having a baby villager sort of running around going foreign contaminant every so often and like sweeping up for you basically would be quite funny.
Like the thought had crossed my mind because I have villagers in my trading hall for iron and quartz to help, build the command center. And I've thought quite often of going into the villager textures and just trying to find something online that turns villagers into robots or something, and then changing their sounds, their honks into like beeps and boops just for fun flavor. Like it's not going to affect building. But yeah, I think it would be neat to have a little droid running around. I thought about retexturing a lays to look like little, hover droids or something like that. That could be really, really fun. I need a 36-hour day before I can figure out how to do that. But yeah, there's definitely some possibilities. I also have to tip my hat to the art team because they would have had to do baby villager textures for all the different versions of villagers, like
Yeah,
Savannah and Plains and
the
the
snowy
Winter
ones and
Village,
tiger
snowy
ones.
ones,
Yeah,
taiga ones. Like there's all the different ones that they have to do. Swamp. So yeah, it's hard, especially because again, you're dealing with, as you mentioned, like a much reduced pixel palette when you get down that low. But something that they did not reduce, they actually increased, is the hitbox. And I didn't realize this, but previously the baby zombies hitbox didn't include the head. No
yeah,
wonder
yeah.
I couldn't hit them. Like
Right.
they're a third head. So like now they're half head, and at least the hitbox goes around the entire the entire mob. But the hitbox varies, because something that is worth noting is that like baby zombie villagers and other mobs, they're not all the same height. So like the piglins are shorter than the baby zombie, and I think there's a couple of other baby characters that are a little bit. Husks are actually tallest, I think, out of all of
Yeah.
them, and then drowned and baby zombies are similar, and then villagers, they get smaller. So I don't know. I don't have the measurements, but I wonder if any of these mobs or all of them still fit under a 1 block space. Like if you're trying to keep yourself safe from baby zombies,
Yeah.
are like, do you need a 1 block? Do you need less than, like, what is a trapdoor still going to be enough, or do you have to put something in a lot bigger, like a slab, to really make sure that that's cut off? Because sometimes with farms, I'm not sure if you've done this on your ground farm, but sometimes you want to have that hole be smaller than a block so that little baby versions don't come in. I know that we've done that on the gold farm on the Citadel, because of the potential for angry baby zombified piglins to jump through a high gap. There's like a trapdoor that keeps them from doing that.
Yeah.
And so I imagine that's going to be something that the technical players are going to experiment with in terms of the hitbox size. But it is good that it's now over the entire mob. I think that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some farms that have to adapt to some of that stuff, I think, if there's going to be some size changes. But I do think it's neat that it's at least being made to match the model more closely, and kind of, if a couple of scale changes need to happen so it doesn't completely break stuff, I don't think it's going to matter that much if, a couple of pixels shift around here and there. But overall, I'm interested in the direction of this update, especially considering how hard they've gone into baby mobs. Like, at first I thought it was just going to be a handful of baby mobs in the same way that we got a handful of, like, the cow and pig variants. But now it seems like across the board, every baby mob is getting touched by the changes that are making in this update. So while it's not necessarily exciting to me on the scale of getting new blocks or items and that kind of thing, it's at least like feeling coherent as an update to me now, where previously it just felt like, okay, this is the start of something, let's see where it goes.
And I wonder how much they would have benefited, even from the conversations that we've had on the show, by announcing that it was going to do that from the get-go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
if they just made the changes to the baby mobs at first, the cute ones, and there was no indication that there was going to be more. There was no indication they were going to do hostile mobs. Like, they said it was going to be an update of cuteness, but like, they didn't really clearly communicate, this is what we're trying to do with this update. And I kind of feel like if you go out ahead of that, like, it's not a huge update. I don't feel like you're biting off more than you can chew. So if that's the intention, just let everybody know from the beginning. Because then, like, I remember 1 week on the show, I was saying, well, this is all temporary unless we can keep them babies. And then the very next week they announced, or the very next day they announced the golden dandelion, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if we knew that a little bit earlier on, like, hey, we're working on a method to keep them babies, so don't worry about that. Like, I feel like you could probably, front load some of your communication to include that. You don't have to give us the details and like save some things for the snapshots, but I feel like just kind of like a roadmap would be good on the first snapshot. And actually, Wormbo in our live chat makes a good point. You can't give baby dandelions to villagers. So I couldn't make a little Mo droid out of a baby villager. I'd have to pick a baby zombie or something, because the baby villager would eventually grow up. There's no way to stop that from happening.
Yeah. It is worth noting, actually, that on their YouTube channel, and it may be posted elsewhere, I couldn't find it on Minecraft.net at all, but they did post a few days ago, I think roughly when the latest snapshot came out, they did post a questionnaire link for people to submit feedback on how they were enjoying the drops and stuff, and like maybe kind of chip in on how they thought drops were working for them as a way to keep Minecraft updated. So I imagine at this stage, now we've had like a couple of years worth of these incremental updates, I think the community might start to feel a little bit more restless about the drop idea, especially when there are some drops like this that don't have a ton of appeal to some players, but will have a broad appeal to the sort of general audience. And I'm kind of curious if people are now leaving feedback on that. The people who are inclined to leave feedback, perhaps, are going to be the ones who are like, we kind of want a big thematic update for the first time in a while, because it's been a long time since we last had one of those.
Cool. Yeah, I'll grab that link and I'll include it in our show notes at thespawnchunks.com.
Absolutely. Well, for now, we're going to move on into chunk mail, which is going to be the focus of today's main discussion. We have a bunch of email to read. If you would like to email the show, the email address is spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. We like people to keep their emails short and to the point if they can. That really does help them get included in the show more easily. And if you're a patron, let us know you're a patron in the subject line if you support us on Patreon already, because that way we can include those in the post show. We got one email that we're going to read in the post show as well, just to make sure that our patron community gets a little bit of bonus content this week.
First email is from Half Pint, which suggests that it comes in pints, which is always a good thing. Smart Copper Golems is the subject line. Hi, Pix and Joel. I'm working on an item sorter command center system that would both benefit from and would be limited by the Copper Golem ability to sort items regardless of the item's data. I would love a way to level up or train a Copper Golem to be able to sort items like enchanted books by enchantment or sort tools by durability, etc. Perhaps using another variation of the Copper Golem, like those that have poppies, could have an advanced sorting ability. I appreciate your discussions from the perspective of game mechanics. It has helped me a lot to understand the game. Half Pint died after accidentally hitting an iron golem while trying to wax her Copper Golem.
It happens to the best of us. I've known many a hardcore run to end due to accidentally hitting an iron golem. They're rough. They do a lot of damage. So yeah, this is an interesting one. I think a lot of people, when they saw that Copper Golems were going to help with item sorting, expected things to be more customizable. And I think this is the major point of friction with the Copper Golem's actual eventual functionality, was that it isn't as intuitive as some players would want. Like, it checks a certain amount of chests, but it does it mechanically without any sense of, like, memory. And in some cases, it helps that it's more broad when it comes to putting all of the enchanted books in one place, which you can't do with stuff like item filters with redstone. Then for some people, that wasn't quite the functionality they wanted, and they wanted them to be able to sort stuff by NBT data. So I think it's a kind of, you can't have your cake and eat it too kind of situation, where I like the notion of being able to train them a little bit, but how exactly we do that without a GUI or without any kind of like additional variation on Copper Golems, without it being like, the full fresh ones always sort everything exactly as they do right now, but then the weathered and the oxidized ones sort things slightly differently. Like, how do you convey that, and how do you stop that from messing with people's aesthetic considerations if they want their golems to look a certain way versus acting a certain way? So it's a tricky one. There's a lot of potential solutions to stuff like this.
Yeah, I get the appeal to want to make the Copper Golems sort everything, but I think they're designed as more of a stopgap. Like, they're designed to get you part of the way there, and then you've got to figure out the rest, And I think in some ways, people sometimes overthink how much they want to be automatically sorted. Like, I've got a big storage system right now in this command center. It's all manual. I'm just putting stuff into shulker boxes. Like, I don't need to necessarily have it all sorted automatically. And I am bringing in, like, when I do some digging, I'm bringing in a lot of stone, but I just bring the shulker boxes with me. So, like, I feel like it's a little bit not of a, it's like a champagne problem, I think, to want to separate your enchanted books by enchantment, because at what point do you really need that many enchanted books? Like, I don't know what you're doing other than just like the pure activity of sorting the books is the gameplay for you, which is fine. I'm not trying to say that isn't good. But same thing with tools and durability. Like, I don't keep tools around. Like, I tend to just, like, if I'm not combining them to use myself, then I just don't really need them, or I'm melting them down, in the case of our gold farm, into nuggets that I can then make golden carrots with, right? So, and even then, recently I switched to trading with a villager. So I don't know, like, I feel like there's a use for the Copper Golems in that I really like that we can now sort things where we don't need double chests upon double chests of stairs, right? Like, you can say, okay, as you've done on the survival guide, you've got the main bulk storage of the wood type, but then you've got the Copper Golem using a filter chest to then gives you like a couple stacks of stairs, a couple stacks of slabs. Like, you don't need reams of all these little sub blocks, but we want some. And I think that while it is slow, I think the Copper Golem does that well. It's a little bit to set up. It adds some gameplay, but I don't know how complex you want the Copper Golem to be, because at some point it just removes, I think it's something, a point that you've made before, it removes the emergent gameplay systems that players have to come up with in order to work the Copper Golem into how they want their storage system to work.
Yeah, we have allays as well. Allays can pick up items that match MBT data for what they're holding. The problem then becomes that they can't be made to hold anything else new unless a player removes the item from their hands and gives them another one. So in the case of enchanted books, you need 30 plus allays to make sure you have all of the enchantments covered. And that's also like tiers of enchantments need to be factored in at that point as well. There are a lot of possible variations in which, like, if you're sorting tools by something as granular as durability, like a netherite pickaxe has over 2,000 possible states of durability if you're just looking at the numerical values, right? So exact durability values feels like a wild thing to be sorting that stuff to. Now, in some cases when mobs spawn with equipment, I've been seeing this with the tridents from my drowned farm, they tend to spawn with equipment that is an exact amount damaged. Like they'll have, there's a lot of tridents you get that are like, these have 6 durability or something like that, and they are reliable values, so you could maybe sort them that way. But I think largely speaking, if you were sorting tools, you might want them sorted by ranges. That's like percentage of durability remaining. If they could sort tools that were still in the green as far as the graphic of the durability bar goes, as opposed to tools that are in the red or like basically broken, that might work better, but you've also got to consider that means very different numerical values depending on what the tool is, because a wood pickaxe that's in the red has like 7 durability left, whereas a netherite pickaxe that's in the red still has maybe like 250 or so, and so it works out a little differently. And just based on the amount of possible variations, if you're using something as broad as tool durability to sort things, you're going to need a lot of chests in order to make that happen with any sort of accuracy. And to what end? I think it's a lot easier to sort all of the tools into one chest and then have the player be able to sort those things out for themselves later in terms of what you combine and everything. Even with relatively common items like bows, when you're getting those from a skeleton spawner, most of the time I'm just combining those, even in a crafter now, so that you end up with a fully repaired bow, and then just output that into a chest, and from there it can go wherever. It can go into, craft dispensers with them and so forth. I think it's easy to see some use cases for why copper golems could be made to do stuff like this, and it could be very beneficial to a storage system like what Halfpint is working on. But I think the amount of granularity you need there is why you need to start using all of the other potential solutions for sorting systems. Start using allays where you can, and have like a whole team of things working behind the scenes to help you get the ideal storage system put together.
I do like the idea of copper golems getting better over time, or something to train them up. I don't think the additional ability is necessarily needed, but I could see them being faster, or moving with the same items or the same chests or something. Because I feel like one complaint that people have, despite loving them in some ways, is their speed. Is that they're a little bit slower, or maybe the more experience they get, the quieter they get. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that would certainly help a lot of people. I think it's the chests opening and closing that people take the most issue with. But yeah, the copper golems do get a little noisy here and there. We're going to move on into our next email. This one comes in from Devo with the subject of a winter update. Hi Joel and Pix. With the recent cold weather and snow, I've been thinking about a Minecraft winter update. Icicles could be a perfect addition using existing pointed dripstone mechanics. Icicles could generate in cold biomes or ice caves, and even fill cauldrons with powder snow. I would also love to see Minecraft implement more Easter eggs. Currently, chests turn into presents from December 24th to 26th in Java Edition, but an environmental overhaul for the season would be even better. Would love to hear your thoughts. Devo was impaled by an icicle.
I think icicles would be a fun addition to Minecraft. Decoratively, especially if you could do the same thing that you can do with dripstone, where you can like build them up and make them look cool. I think that's something that's missing, honestly, from some of the wintry biomes. And functionality. Like, I don't know about the logic behind dripping powdered snow. I know we already have dripping water from dripstone, so you wouldn't want to repeat that. But I feel like that could be fun to explore as well, especially if they come up with some new mechanic that works similar to dripstone, but then gives you something new. I'm not sure what that could be. But having some experience recently in the ice caves in Hightail, there are underground caves that have icicles and ice flows and underground rivers, and it provides a unique challenge to get around and some dangers of like slipping off the edge of a frozen waterfall into a cavern below filled of what kind of dangers you don't know. And I will say that the ice in Hightail is way slippery compared to Minecraft. Like it's much harder to move around, and it also nerfs your jump. Like you can't jump off of it as well. I feel like in Minecraft it increases your speed and therefore you jump a little bit farther or something with ice in Minecraft. But in Hightail it actually reduces your horizontal and your vertical distance, from what I can tell. So that could be fun. Like I think just like finding a lush cave is a kind of a fun experience where you're kind of digging through deep slate. And the gray gives way to this big green cavern. It could be just as cool to be digging into a snowy biome and going through your dull cave and then coming out into this really cool, like ice palace looking underground cave. I think as a biome, like an underground biome, a frozen cave would be cool. I think they could add all kinds of stuff. You know, there's opportunities there for new mobs and all kinds of things like that. So I think the idea of icicles is a solid one.
Yeah, I agree. I think, especially if they form in underground biomes, I think ice caves were one of those ideas that was thrown around pretty early when we knew we were getting underground biomes in the Caves and Cliffs update, and it might have been dismissed because it felt kind of like an obvious idea, kind of like low-hanging fruit, or maybe they didn't have too many ideas to support it, where lush caves and dripstone caves were getting whole new block types and things like that, whereas ice caves might have just meant moving existing ice types and snow into a cave environment, and while that might be pretty looking, it doesn't necessarily make it a new special feature for a lot of folks. And icicles could be one of the things that maybe balances that stuff out. I also think that lush caves and dripstone caves, because they're so isolated underground, can feel removed from whatever the surface biome is, even if they do have a higher likelihood of generating in like warmer or more humid areas for lush caves and sort of drier areas for dripstone caves. It would feel a little strange if you found a Badlands biome that had an ice cave underneath it. And I don't think the underground biomes are so closely tied to surface biomes that it makes obvious sense where either of those would end up. So it would maybe feel kind of strange climate-wise if we ended up with ice caves generating the way that the two current cave systems do. But in terms of the icicle idea, I think I kind of took a bit more inspiration adding on to that from one of Cubfan's ideas from the List series that we discussed briefly last week. He said it'd be a fun idea for explosions in dripstone caves to shake the stalactites loose and have them fall. So if like a creeper blows up nearby, it maybe sends like a shockwave to anything in a certain radius, and there's a chance that dripstone stalactites fall down, which means that you have to play a little more carefully in dripstone caves and look up a little bit more, and it creates more situations where the stalactites can fall on players, which typically it's only possible to break them manually or using a trident, at which point you're not under the dripstone more often than not, and it doesn't really feel like there's much danger to the player. But it was a cool idea. I thought maybe instead that could happen with icicles and either explosions or maybe light sources, in the same way that, I think ice can be melted using high enough light levels. I know snow layers melt as well. Right. So the idea, if you put a torch in an ice cave that has a chance to melt the thing that's kind of holding an icicle to the ceiling, could be a fun idea. And it'd make icicles different enough from pointed dripstone to make them mechanically a worthwhile addition. Because if they were modeled after the behavior of pointed dripstone and how it was formed, then at least they would get something unique to make them distinct from pointed dripstone and not just retroactively add functionality like that to pointed dripstone in the first place.
I think there need to be a way for players to be able to collect them and put them the way that they want too. So like if you wanted to make an ice fortress, to take your icicles and put them the wrong way up, like the pointy end to the sky, to make it look like a spiky top to a battlement or something like that. I think that could be really fun. And there was bits in the news about transparent or translucent pixels, and I can imagine icicles in the game having a texture that you can partially see through. I think that would be really cool as well. Again, differentiating them from dripstone and providing that challenge. Like if these things are going to fall, then if they're partly transparent, then like that makes them harder to see. So that could also be a challenge in the case of icicles falling from the ceiling, which would be fun.
Yeah, it is quite neat that they've recently made sure transparency in some textures can be more robust as of this snapshot. So yeah, I like the idea of there being the opportunity to add more transparent textures. As far as the other half of this email, though, like the idea of Minecraft implementing more seasonal Easter eggs, it's funny that we mention Easter eggs and then immediately start talking about what happens at Christmas with the chests. But like, well, how do you feel about that? The more kind of like seasonal stuff happening in Minecraft throughout the calendar year.
I'm all for that kind of flavor in games, especially sandbox games that can get a little bit of new life from players, in those seasons. But I think it has to be something that you can toggle on and off in the settings. I'll use Satisfactory as an example. They do an event in December called Fixmas, and you build Christmas ornaments. Like you do all the same mechanics that you've experienced in Satisfactory, but you build candy canes and Christmas balls. And the whole idea is that you automatically send all these items to a Christmas tree that you then decorate. And when you finish decorating it with all the items from the Advent calendar, then you have one Fixmas. But if you're playing Satisfactory during December and you don't want presents falling from the sky and all the stuff in your Advent calendar, you can just opt out in the settings, and it just doesn't happen. It doesn't affect your build at all. It's not permanent. You can always tear the stuff down. It's nothing that affects your build if you decide to participate. But it is just something that you can turn off if you want. And I think that would be a good way to approach it with Minecraft. Like if you wanted to have additional Christmas stuff, like ribbons around pine trees or spruce trees in Minecraft, if you wanted to have Santa hats on the cows or stuff like that, there might be some people that just be like, I just really don't want to do this, and so I'd rather not. The other thing is that if it's a winter environment, like if you're thinking, oh, I like Christmas, I want there to be a snowy, wintry Christmas scene everywhere. Not everybody has a wintry Christmas. Like if you're in a tropical climate, you've got palm trees with Christmas lights on them. And if you're in the southern hemisphere, then a lot of those people have summer in the Christmas season. So having it be quite as widespread as affecting the weather and environment in Minecraft probably would feel weird for half the players. So they're probably not going to do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that this year and last year's spring drops have been themed around stuff we typically associate with spring in the northern hemisphere. It's like, new flowers, like a bit more flora was added, like the baby animals this time around, which obviously extends to baby mobs in general, so maybe makes it a bit less specific. But I think it's interesting that we focus on that stuff with spring and like the new year, but they don't necessarily extend that idea to cold biomes getting affected by winter drops and like beaches being present in summer, or maybe working on like the taiga biomes and stuff like that in an autumnal context. I can't remember if like leaf litter, I think, came along with Spring to Life, but that feels very autumnal to me because it's about like leaves falling and leaving kind of brown leaf litter around. So it's kind of interesting that all of that stuff came along at the same time because it was thematically necessary, but it still feels like a spring update. And I don't think we get as much attention paid to the other seasons. But that could, again, also be that people are used to the idea of spring as a concept regardless of whether or not it happens at that time of year for them. Obviously, where you or I live in the Northern Hemisphere, we're used to getting more frequently noticeable changes in seasons. Like we notice when it starts to snow outside or when it starts to like get a lot warmer for summer. But then, there are going to be some places where seasonal variation is much less noticeable around like closer to the equator and so forth. So it's interesting to me that they haven't really done like a winter feeling drop, unless you consider the Pale Garden wintry just by virtue of the fact that it is whiter and a bit colder feeling in the color palette, but that's a bit of a stretch, I think. Yeah,
I've not really had anything that jumps to mind from a seasonal standpoint that would be like that for Minecraft, with, like you said, the exception of the spring drop to life, that stuff. I feel like there hasn't been, if there's been updates to any of the wintry areas, it's been along with other things, adding goats along with other updates. Like it's not been just like a focused thing. And that's where they could get away with, the ice caves and the icicles, because then if it doesn't feel then like it's a biome or a seasonal thing, it just feels like, well, we're just adding a mystical cave feature, to the game as opposed to something that's a little bit more broad.
Yeah. I also wonder if they get people immediately going, well, if we're having ice caves, then add a Yeti, and like the sort of the player sort of feature creep ideas sort of start to rear their heads at that point. But yeah, interesting idea, and I think it's interesting that we overlook some of the Easter eggs in Minecraft. There are a few other seasonal things that happen, like jack-o'-lanterns popping up on zombies' heads every time Halloween rolls around, that kind of thing. You don't want that stuff to be too intrusive. You don't want it to be like every month of the year. Otherwise, you have like a Valentine's Day thing. You have, I don't know, like every mob suddenly starts wearing green around St. Patrick's Day, that kind of stuff. It starts to feel a little bit cheesy at that stage. So I think it's nice that they are occasional dots on the calendar to look forward to. I think that's really the way I'd prefer it myself.
And there might be a data pack out there that does that. Like you might be able to find a data pack that does does Halloween and like extra stuff, and St. Patrick's Day and Valentine's Day and International Pizza Day. Like, I'm on board. So like, I think that those could be fun. Our final email comes in from Fireo, and it's about echoing enchantments. Hi, Pix and Joel. I was thinking recently about how the Echo Shard could have more uses, aren't we all? What if you could enchant an Echo Shard in the enchantment table, and whatever you enchanted it with would continue to appear as an option in the enchantment table, echoing the shard for a random amount of uses? Fireo was crushed by despair when he mistakenly enchanted his Echo Shard with channeling.
Oh, another chunk mail, another Echo Shard idea. I love the tradition at this point. I do think, though, the term Echo Shard is so evocative, and the sprite for them is so cool for an item which currently has a single use. It's no wonder that players keep coming up with new ideas for them, because they seem like one of the biggest missed opportunities at this point in the game. Obviously, if Mojang has long-term plans for them, great. But since we don't know what those are yet, I can see why players keep writing in with cool ideas for the Echo Shard, because it promises a lot, and then it delivers very little as far as the current survival experience of Minecraft is concerned.
Yeah, I agree. And I like the idea of controlling, or at least increasing the odds of getting what you want from the enchanting table. You still have to go through the randomness of enchanting the shard first. So like that game mechanic still exists and would be, could be smooth, it could be frustrating depending on your luck. But I like the idea of then using that shard to increase the likelihood of something. And enchanting it with the one that you want is a good way to control that, because I can't really think of another way to do that, because there's so many enchantments. Having a UI just doesn't seem like the best way to like select something. However, introducing more randomness with the number of uses for an enchanted Echo Shard is not my cup of tea. I would rather it either have durability, where you understand that it is going to be used until it is used up, or it's something that is just a permanent addition to an enchanting table. And actually, something that I liked about that idea was the enchanting table sort of looks like it has slots in it. I know there's supposed to be like diamonds in the corners, but it does sort of look like you could add slots or add jewels to it. And I think that could be really fun too, if you used Echo Shards to either augment your existing enchanting table, like maybe adding one Echo Shard that's enchanted increases your likelihood by 20%. What about 2? Is that 40? 3, is that 75? What are the ways that you could affect different levels of increasing the number of ways you get the enchantment that you want? But then I was also thinking that maybe you could just craft a new enchanting table. Like maybe you could take the Echo Shards with an existing crafting table and turn it into an Echo enchanting table. And then I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what it does, but just the idea of using the Echo Shard to enhance an existing Minecraft item and then take it to another level, I think is a cool way to implement that, because it has, like you said in the beginning, a lot of potential to showcase different things and have fun with that. So I like the idea of a new enchanting table, but I don't know what that UI looks like. I feel like there's not a lot of room in the enchanting UI right now, so I don't know what you would do to then communicate that to the player and how you get that to all work. But I do like the idea of an Echo Shard and the enchanting table together.
Yeah, I think the implication here is that you put it just in the slot where a book would normally go, and then it sort of locks in the enchantment, but maybe consumes the Echo Shard in the process. And
maybe.
I like the idea of giving players better control over enchanting, but typically I'm not necessarily looking to enchant multiple tools with the same thing with the enchanting table, especially when you consider that if you're enchanting a diamond pickaxe, there's a possibility of getting multiple enchantments on that. You can sometimes end up with unbreaking, efficiency, and fortune or silk touch, right? And so I don't know if I necessarily want to do that every time. Like, perhaps the ability to do that would change my habits. Like, if I saw Silk Touch came up, I went, okay, I Echo Shard that, and then I can enchant all of my Silk Touch tools in a row, so I make sure I get a pickaxe and a shovel and an axe and a hoe, I guess, if you're using the hoe for that. I think there's a possibility that that would be useful, but broadly speaking, most of what I want from the enchantment table is something I didn't just get, because then I'm looking to enchant a Silk Touch pickaxe and a Fortune pickaxe. And so I don't necessarily want the repetition. I want it kind of broken up by different things. And it would make more sense if I wanted to get lots of enchanted books, I suppose, if I wanted to lock in Unbreaking 3 and make sure that the next few books were Unbreaking 3 as well, so I could add that to all of my tools. But again, there's no guarantee that I wouldn't already have Unbreaking 3 on a couple of things, and I need the other book that I didn't get when I enchanted the tool raw in the enchanting table. So enchanting as a system in general is a bit haphazard, but I don't know if this is necessarily a system that makes it less haphazard by introducing something that can just lock in an enchantment for a little while, because it's not always what the player needs. And considering where we get Echo Shards from, this idea seems to revolve around the idea of going to ancient cities much earlier in the game than I typically would. Like, by the time I feel ready to explore the Deep Dark and find an ancient city, chances are I've done all of the early game enchanting that I want to, and I'm operating with diamond gear with a decent level of protection, or what have you. And so, while a lot of the opportunity to get new gear from ancient cities is missed out on by the fact that the diamond leggings in this chest aren't going to matter to me when I already have my own set, it still feels like you want to be well prepared to go down there, if not to fight the Warden, because obviously you're going to get flattened with diamond armor regardless, but if you want to get down to the Deep Dark in the first place, that's a lot of exploring through caves and potentially encountering hostile mobs on the way there before you have to deal with anything in the Deep Dark itself. So I get the sense that you'd need Echo Shards to be available sooner if you really wanted this to feel like an effective way to enhance the enchanting mechanics.
And if you get into Echo Shards duplicating books or duplicating enchantments, like, it sort of starts to creep in on like the library and trade functionality, right? Like, it's not that that's a good mechanic with the amount of like breaking lecterns and all that kind of stuff. Although that's, I think, not going to be as fruitful as it is right now when the new drop comes out. So it starts to kind of encroach on other mechanics and other ways that you can, as a player, you can control enchantments. Yeah.
And I think overall, the enchanting mechanics need an overhaul, but it's not this. I feel like it's, unfortunately. And the thing about it breaking randomly as well, like, I think one of the most annoying things about anvil mechanics right now, aside from the fact that they cap after a certain amount of levels and you can't continue to repair stuff, is the fact that they randomly get levels of durability assigned to them and that they break after a not fixed amount of uses. Like, it can be like 4 uses of an anvil and it's done, or it can be, they continue for like 40. So I think having the Echo Shard have a similar set of mechanics doesn't feel all that great to me. So yeah. I'd be kind of curious how they could incorporate that into enchanting in a way that made a little bit more user-friendly mechanics. Either way, that's where we're going to wrap up this episode of the Spawn Chunks. Like I said, we do have another email that we're going to read in the render distance for our patrons. But for now, you can find more information about the show and links to some of the stuff that we've talked about today over at thespawnchunks.com. The music for the show is composed by me, and the Spawn Chunks is proud, as ever, to be a listener-supported podcast. If you're getting some value out of the show, why not consider putting some value back in? You can do that at patreon.com/thespawnchunks. Pledging at any of our paid tiers gets you an invite to our patrons-only Discord chat. You can listen to the show live when we record it in Discord every Monday. We also have monthly and quarterly hangouts you can join in. The next monthly hangout is going to be at the end of February, and you can let us know what you've been up to in Minecraft this month. We currently have 262 patrons. There is always room for more. Special thanks go out to our content engineer patrons, Kynabeeld, Hunter555, Jumbo Sale, Mindtrip Media, and That Penguin Dude. We'd also like to give a quick shout out to our new annual members, Glowwatts and Wild Mandrake. Thank you so much for supporting us for a full year in advance.
Sharing the podcast with your friends is the easiest way to support the show. It's free. Just tell someone where they can find the Spawn Chunks. We are the Spawn Chunks on all the social media that matters. New episodes are available on Mondays on all the platforms that matter, as well as video versions on Spotify and on YouTube. The RSS feed is linked on the spawnchunks.com. You can also check out the patron-only RSS feed on the Patreon page. That's where you get the render distance, the extended version of the podcast.
My name is Johnny, but online I go by Pixel Riffs. You can find most of what I do at youtube.com/pixelriffs, where the Minecraft Survival Guide is currently in its 3rd season. I also stream 3 days a week on Twitch, doing behind-the-scenes work for my YouTube series. I'm the voice of the unofficial Hermitcraft recap, which you can find through a quick YouTube search. And aside from that, I'm at Pixel Riffs on both Blue Sky and Instagram. Joel, where can people find you online?
I will point you towards the Citadel Cafe, which is my other podcast about sci-fi and fantasy entertainment. This week, we're going to be talking about The Muppet Show, making a return on Disney+, as well as Predator Badlands. Both Steven and I have watched both of those, so it'll be a fun conversation. You can check me out on social media at Joel Duggan and Joel Duggan on Twitch, where I stream Tuesday through Friday at 9 a.m., Saturdays at 1, mostly focusing on Minecraft and the command center that I talk about every week on the show.
Thanks for visiting the Spawn Chunks. The world outside is infinite, but the baby world is about a quarter of the size.